Hi everyone, welcome back. I've got a few things to do today. I found this old little folder thing I used to use. Seems like a more appropriate place to use it now, just to keep track of general tasks and stuff to do around the studio environment. On the list, I've got to do the vitamin breakdown. I've got to prep and ship a doodle for a fan of the channel called Wendy, because believe it or not, we've made a sale already. Yay! Wendy had her eye on something for a while, so I told her I'd be up for shipping it. I've got to set up Hotswap storage for the studio, talk a bit more about that. That's probably what I'll focus on today. Got to calculate some PayPal earnings for Chris. Chris is someone who I recently released the hex scatter tool with for Blender. The thing is, we were trying out the new Gumroad collaboration feature, which is where the revenue evenly gets split. Well, you can set a percentage. But the problem is, while it was splitting payments made by card to Gumroad, it was not splitting anyone who paid using PayPal. Instead, because it's a slightly different system, it paid me all of the money directly, which means Chris wasn't getting their split through those purchases. So I emailed Gumroad support. They've gone back to me saying that they've escalated it and they're having a look. But if that is an actual problem, then that's a pretty massive oversight. And it would also mean that anyone else who's used the collaboration system has also lost money through PayPal. So that could be a pretty big problem if they need to fix that. It might mean that people need to retroactively be paid. But that is only if it is a problem. Now, with me and Chris, I can always just pay Chris half of whatever transactions I got through PayPal that happen to include hex scatter. And thankfully, Chris is very understanding, so there's no impending deadline on getting that done. But part of me wants to wait and see whether Gumroad will actually do something retroactive for all of the people that have been using the collab system that might have lost money through PayPal, again, if it is a problem and not just something on our end. So I may hold off and wait and see what they do or what they say, and if enough time passes and I think it's not fair on Chris to have to wait that long, then I will just go and calculate the PayPal difference and then just pay them directly. I've also got to dust my computer. It's cold outside today, so I'm not going to do that. Create new debug and analysis methodology for eye issue, so medical stuff. My eye problem is ongoing and still one of the most complicated things I've ever had to deal with. I'm constantly changing approach, trying to find new information. I'm seeing my ophthalmologist again in 2 days. That thing is just a whole bag of worms. Can of worms. I've got to put hex scatter on my website store page because I've got to do that. Add service computer to my Malwarebytes plan. Test packaging folder method for new merchandise. So let's do the Hotswap storage. Now, I actually unpacked some of this yesterday. So I've got two items that are new to the studio. First of all, our small-scale hotswap for hard drives and SSDs. So everywhere there will be a proper computer like this laptop, I will also have a hotswap available. So this lets you just quickly swap in and out SSDs or hard disk drives, but I'll mostly be using SSDs, which is great for fast transfer for those computers, something I can just quickly grab, pull out, and then pop into another hotswap elsewhere in the studio. So the question may be, why don't I just use network-assisted storage? Because everyone uses some kind of NAS device, and I never really liked the idea of them. I tried to get into them. I mean, I like the idea of a centralized storage, but part of it is I just hated how all the NAS devices looked. And I know you can just do it for a regular computer anyway, but even that felt a bit unstable. I liked the open and kind of offline nature of just having a bunch of drives, whether they're just USB sticks or SSDs, that I can just quickly yank out and put in somewhere else. Something about the kinetic action of that seems satisfying. And wherever there's a kinetic action or haptic action, there's an opportunity to automate something or to connect automations to that process. So imagine that I do a recording on this laptop and it records directly to an SSD in the hotswap. I can pull that out and then put that in a hotswap bay in between my two computers there. And I could write a program that says when we detect that something's been added, then we automatically ingest the footage and then create a Premiere work environment. So people might think the act of having to take something out and put something in is unnecessary if you had network assisted storage, but I see it as a way of not only is it secure in the way that there's no connection between the computers in case one gets compromised that way, other than the Wi-Fi, of course, but also that action becomes a powerful part of the automation process. And it's just satisfying as well. I like the idea of having these data slots, a bit like Star Wars, I think it's sci-fi having a rectangular thing with a bunch of data and information on it. So the small scale hotswaps look like this. I have another one that's just one bay as well. And you can see how if you're using a regular hard drive, then the plastic panel goes down to fit that in. If it's just an SSD, then it would just slot inside the open gap. We have our data to USB, and there are options for USB-C versions as well, so probably faster transfer, but the problem is not every device supports USB-C, and especially with the computers over there, I mean, the service one does, but my main work one doesn't, or at least it's got it on the case, but it hasn't been wired up. So let me grab the other device to show you. So I thought I'd give this one a try. It's from Sabrent, but it's basically the same kind of thing. I just opened that up, but this one only supports the SSD sizes, which is perfectly fine because that's all I want to use. It's also got a fan inbuilt as well to keep things cool. But my only concern with this is that there's a magnet there to keep the top on. And I don't like the idea of having magnets near drives. So that's a bit weird, but I mean, they must have tested it. But I'll give it a try and see what happens. So that's just going to sit in between the two computers there. And then I'll probably have a cable for each just hovering around the back here so I can just plug them in and out as I need them without much effort. So that'll be the process. Basically, working from one part of the studio, everything is going onto a data slab. That might be a cooler way of saying it. I then grab the slab, put the slab over there, plonk, and then I can access it. Or there may be some automation involved. And you can get complex with that as well. So maybe each slab will have a marking on it and it'll be used for a certain type of corner of the studio. Then I'll have like a little text file on there with a bit of contextual information. And then maybe the automation will be once it's plugged into the ingest point over there, a program will look and it will look for the context file. And then depending on what the context file is, it'll ingest things in a different way. So if I say that a slab is used for recording, then I have a little text file on there with some contextual information telling the ingest that it's for recording. So then when it's plugged in, it makes Premiere projects from that. Whereas if it's a different type of thing, say it's like a lab or a shipping thing, then the ingest may do something else. So I like this idea rather than a traditional network assisted storage where everything is just kind of ingressing into one point and something that's not super secure. But again, this is the kind of thing where like there are so many solutions to network storage and there are people that are addicted to the finer details, armchair experts. This is how I like doing things. It's a little bit like how in Blender, I've always said I don't like using Node Wrangler much, even though it's super efficient, and it'd be stupid not to use it because I like the act of manually making links between nodes, even if it's slower, because it helps my mental process. I'm remembering the story of how things connect every time I do it. Likewise, I don't know, the act of taking a slab out of one corner and putting it into another corner is the same kind of thing. Like connecting a node from one point to another. There's a story going on. I feel like we always try to automate everything and take every action out of every process. But I think maybe instead of doing that, we should sometimes try and just minimize it to an important action rather than no action at all. Like I said, automations can be wrapped around an action. In that way, we're making every action as valuable as it can be rather than trying to eliminate it altogether. But maybe that's still silly for some people. This isn't a very long data cable though. And also for this stand, I was trying to think about maybe I could get a custom extra tray made up where I can put the amplifier for this microphone and the Hotswap actually on the tripod so I can move all of this around still. So having all that data capability and the microphone quality and stuff like that all in a mobile stand, that would be pretty OP, I would say. And also considering there's like 2 bays in here, I could have terabytes worth of space on a mobile stand just for recording. Again, super OP. All right, so I'm just resting the Hotswap on the desk for now. I've got a spare SSD. It's plugged in, it's connected to the laptop. I'm going to grab that SSD and we'll just give this a quick test to see if it's actually reading. All right, so I've got a 1 terabyte SSD here from 2023, completely untouched and ready to go. Look at that. Pretty. I love the Samsung ones. So this is like a kind of sci-fi data slab. You know what I mean? Imagine having like I could have a library just like full of these, rows of these. I can just pull them out for different projects and stuff, slot them in, take them out, put them back in the archive, you know, very Star Wars. All right, so that's just been plugged in. Will it detect? Now, I know I may need to do some kind of drive setup, but let's see if it picks anything up as standard. Okay, so I can see in the disk management settings that we have something not set up. I wonder if I can show you this actually. Let me create a new recording setup. So you should now be able to see exactly what I can see. Hello. So let me bring that down. So we can see here in the disk management, we have the unallocated disk. So it is clearly picking something up. Let's make a new simple volume. So what drive letter do we want for this one? Let's do R for recording. And it's far enough down that it won't conflict with other things in terms of a standard for drive settings. We can also not assign a drive letter, but I will. NTFS is the right one, right? I always get confused. Yep, that's right. Okay, so next, that's fine. Let's get that formatted. Perfect. So checking that out, we've got a new 1 terabyte drive ready to go. So ideally, I would be able to change my OBS settings so it will record directly into the drive, and hopefully it will still detect the same letter if I unplug and plug it back in. So let's just do that quickly. So I'm going to unplug it while it's active. Okay, that's gone. Let's plug it back in. Waiting. Anything going to happen there? Or is that problematic? Should I power it down before I plug it back in? Push it down a bit further. Let me power the Hotswap off and on. So off. Just pushed it back in. Let's power it back on. And it's not picking it up. That's interesting. And the disk management is now crashing. Ooh, is that not a good sign? It's now having trouble loading the disk configuration information. Not good. I can always try and see if the drive is detected in the other computer. Let me do that quickly. Oh, and interesting. When I turn off the Hotswap bay, now that's starts working. That's problematic. Okay, no need to worry too much. I just tested it. This one does open in that Hotswap bay on the other side of the studio immediately. It opens as a new volume D, full 1 terabyte, or the 900 and something gigabytes. So it may be something to do with this Hotswap. I may need to restart the computer. Let me try the other bay. Other bay, turning on. Yes, that's detected. New volume R. Okay, so I'm going to turn it off and then try the first bay again. Turning off, unplug, putting into the first bay, turning back on. What are you going to do? Nothing at all. Weird. Is that because one bay is supposed to be for like cloning and stuff? Turning off, moving drive from first bay to second again, turning back on. We're back on in bay 2 and now it's not... Oh, it sees something there. Taking a little while, not letting me access it. I'm going to do a quick restart. All right, I've just restarted and the drive is now there and ready to use again. Let me just test making a quick file in there. F off Adobe, test, problem there, saved. Close, open, fine. So it's not clear whether the access problem is a Windows bug or a Hotswap issue, but that's okay. It's a 1 terabyte drive. If it causes issues taking it in and out while the computer's running, which isn't a problem with the other ones, then I'll just wait until the recording's done, which is when I'll usually close the laptop anyway. Then I can just take it out, ingest everything, put it back. The computer won't even know anything's happened. So that's all functionally fine. Now I need to test recording directly to the drive. So for the sake of consistency, it should be done through the R drive on here every time. Okay, so now assuming I'm smooth and you're watching me okay, you can see here that this video you're watching now is actively recording straight into the SSD, and I've moved over the other recording files that were already on the laptop onto that as well, just to test the transfer speed. It was 370 megabytes a second through this port and this cable, which is way better than the 6 megabytes a second I was getting on a USB stick I was doing before. So this is effectively just upgrading the workflow for the recording path. So like I said, if I can get a tray to stick on this mobile stand, then it would still be mobile, which is currently not because I've got the Hotswap bay resting on a table. So that would have upgraded things from, again, 6 to a 370-ish transfer speed and massively upgraded the recording storage space capability. Then it'll be very quick to transfer the files from here to the other computer with no worries. Hold on, I just realized I can do the dodgiest thing ever. I've got to show you this. So at the moment, I've got this XLR strapped to the power pack for the laptop on the tripod. What if I stick the Hotswap on the power pack as well? Bit of a problem if things get overheated, but I could then move that around. As for extra power, I'm dragging that along with the tripod, which also increases the range, as you can see there. So I may think about sticking the power pack possibly where the pre-existing one is. I'll figure that out. Functionality first, then make mobile later. All right, slight change of plans. For now, before things are attached to the tripod, I've done the jankiest thing ever and got a little trolley I can drive alongside the tripod to move everything in one go. This is going to look so stupid, but I'll have to stop this to move things. Otherwise, the connection will break with the drive. All right, hello. That wasn't too bad. Cool, so that's a mobile XLR Hotswap recording setup. Again, I've got a trolley, so I've got some things to make more efficient. Actually, the trolley's pretty handy. I could put other stuff on it, like stands and mini tripods. Maybe I'll keep it. A computer on wheels. Maybe I could connect them together, so the trolley is the tripod. That would be good. It'd have to be centrally connected. Thinking. Anyway, now the desk is super messy, and there's not much space, but I've got to get this set up. The home for the drives, which I want to be central between my different computers. But then again, the cable has to be long enough to reach that computer, so I may have to put it over this side instead. All right, time to move you again. The problem here is that obviously I've got a lot of junk right now. Vitamins, hand creams, random things I haven't put away, water, little memento things. So we'll see what we can do. It's an American plug by default. How disgusting. Let's get rid of that. Then put on the superior British plug. Oh, that is really not long. Okay, so you're going to go at the back and it's going to have to sit by one of the desk grommets, or it's going to have to go forward. I prefer back for a desk grommet, which you can see on the bottom left corner of the screen there. So that'll probably sit about there. Alternatively, I do have a long line of USBs here, which I could plug it into, but I imagine if it's not plugged in directly, we'll get slower transfer speeds. So we're going to do it properly to start with, but again, over time I could find more ways to condense the space down. Functionality first, compress it later. All right, so that turns on now to see if it works. I'm going to take one of my SSD drives from this Hotswap, make sure that's off. And now which way around do they go in here? That way. Push, nothing. Oh. I could have pushed further. Still nothing. Now, what if I put the top on? Maybe a driver required? Okay, it sees it, but it doesn't really recognize it, I think. Yeah, now it's gone. That's weird. Put it back in first one. So in one Hotswap bay, it is recognized properly, and in the new one, it's not. Weird. All right, now I'm going to try a different port. I've just plugged it in at the front. Oh, now it's detected properly. Okay. I also tried it in a second port on that thing. So let me pull out the second, put it into the first one I tried. And it's detected properly again. That's good. So it does seem like the port is important. However, the ports at the front of the computer I'm now using, they get really hot over time. And I don't quite like that. So I am actually going to try plugging that into a USB dock, which is not recommended, but I want to see if it works. It does work. Now the question is, what are the transfer speeds? Well, let me try moving a video over. So let me get a recent video and copy that over. 39 megabytes a second, not that great. Let's cancel that. Right. Is there another port on the back I can use? Let's see. Oh, that was much better. So there was a port on the back of the computer that didn't work to start with. It's probably an older version of USB. So I took where my mouse was plugged in and plugged that in there instead. And then I plugged the Hotswap bay into where my mouse was, and now it's 300 and something megabytes transfer again. So that's now consistent between the laptop and the computer, meaning to take my recent video on the robot arm, that only takes about 1.5 to 2 seconds to transfer. Perfecto. Okay, so just to recap that is the first phase of the Hotswap system setup. We now have the recording straight to an SSD, which I might want to call a data slab. The transfer to and from the computer to that is fast, 300 something megabytes a second, fast enough for, transfers and live writing and stuff like that. Likewise, that's consistent with the Hotswap bay over there, which can be accessed by the computer. So I can just quickly grab things, take them in and out, swap them around without the computers necessarily being connected. That means if this was offline, entirely offline, then it would still be able to work and I would still be able to transfer things. And that helps to compartmentalize everything. Obviously, a lot of tidying needs to be done. But again, I can write a program that detects when a drive is plugged in and then looks for a context file on it. And then that means the individual SSDs we have can have specified functions to them as well, which would be an interesting thing to play with. So what's next in this system? I need to kind of optimize this trolley tripod thing that I've got going on and figure out a longer cable so I can get the second computer using that Hotswap bay as well. Yeah, cool. Time to get lunch. I'll see you next time. And leave an emoji in the comments. See ya.